Pack mocked Omega after a fall at mating rite. The Alpha King took Omega hand. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Emma Collins stood in the center of the Moonspire Temple, her heart pounding in her chest. The air was thick with anticipation, yet all she could feel was the weight of her own humiliation. She had been waiting for this moment her entire life. It was the mating rite, a sacred ceremony where the strongest alphas and omegas would come together. But for Emma, it felt like a cruel joke. As she stood in front of the assembly, her knees trembled. Her heart raced with both fear and hope. This was the moment she would finally be chosen, the moment that would define her existence. But fate had other plans. As she stepped forward, her foot caught on the edge of the stone floor, and she stumbled, her body hitting the cold, hard ground with a sickening thud. A gasp rippled through the crowd. A wave of laughter followed, cruel and unforgiving. Emma's cheeks burned with shame, her chest tight with the sting of rejection. She could feel the eyes of the entire pack on her, their mocking gazes searing into her soul. The whispers began, harsh and biting. Look at her. So weak. She can't even keep her balance. What a disgrace. Every word felt like a dagger to her heart. She had always been the outcast, the Omega no one wanted, no one cared for. The pack had made that clear time and time again. No one would choose her. She was broken, unwanted. Emma forced herself to stand, her legs shaking beneath her. She refused to let them see her tears. She could not afford to show any weakness. But the shame burned inside her like an unquenchable fire. Just as she prepared to leave, her eyes caught the figure at the entrance of the temple. A tall, imposing figure, draped in the dark leathers of the Alpha King. His presence filled the room, and the laughter died instantly. Every pair of eyes turned toward him in awe. Alexander Thornridge, the Alpha King, stood tall and unmoving, his silver-gray eyes scanning the room with an intensity that made even the bravest wolves shrink back. There was something about him, something magnetic. His very presence commanded respect. As he stepped forward, the whispers in the room grew quiet. Emma's heart fluttered in her chest. She could barely breathe as he approached her, his gaze never leaving her. He stopped in front of her, towering above her fragile form. She could feel the weight of his eyes on her, not with disdain, but with something else, something she couldn't quite place. Without a word, he extended his hand toward her. For a moment, the world seemed to stand still. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Was he offering her a chance? Or was this another cruel joke, another moment of rejection? She hesitated, unsure of what to do. But then, with a trembling hand, she reached out and took his. The moment their fingers touched, Emma felt a rush of warmth spread through her. It was as if the world had shifted, as if everything she had ever known had changed in an instant. She looked up at him, her heart racing, and for the first time in her life, she felt seen. The Alpha King's voice broke the silence. "You are mine," he said, his words strong and unyielding. His declaration reverberated through the temple, silencing the pack completely. Emma's heart skipped a beat. This was real. This wasn't a dream. The Alpha King had claimed her. The pack, once mocking and cruel, now bowed their heads in deference. Emma stood tall, her hands still clasped in his, and for the first time, she felt a sense of belonging. She was no longer the weak, unwanted Omega. She was his, and the world had just shifted in her favor. As the Alpha King's hand enveloped hers, Emma felt a strange, overwhelming warmth flood her body. Her mind raced with confusion, but her heart beat with an unfamiliar rhythm, one of hope. She had never imagined that the day of the mating rite would end this way. The voices around her, once mocking and harsh, now fell into a stunned silence, and for the first time, Emma felt a sense of belonging. Alexander Thornridge, the Alpha King, had claimed her in front of the entire pack. The weight of his gaze was still upon her, his silver-gray eyes filled with a quiet intensity that made her feel both small and powerful at the same time. Slowly, he led her to the center of the ritual ground, where the pack had gathered to witness the sacred ceremony. Emma could feel the eyes of everyone on her. But now, instead of judgment, she sensed awe. The Alpha King's presence seemed to demand it. She stood taller, her posture more confident than she had ever been. "You are mine," Alexander repeated, his voice strong and unwavering, resonating through the air. The words felt like a warm blanket, wrapping around her in a way she had never experienced before. His declaration was not just a command, it was a promise. A promise of protection, of being seen, of being valued. Emma's heart skipped a beat as she realized the significance of those words. The Alpha King had not just claimed her as his mate, he had declared her his equal. The pack, which had once laughed at her, now bowed their heads in respect, their murmurs hushed by the force of Alexander's authority. Emma's gaze shifted to the other members of the pack, those who had once mocked her. She could see their faces, their eyes wide with disbelief. They had not expected this. None of them had. But Alexander had chosen her. And that was all that mattered. She had never been wanted by anyone before, never been seen as worthy. But now, standing beside the Alpha King, she felt a strange power stir within her. The Omega who had once been dismissed as weak and insignificant was now the mate of the most powerful Alpha in the land. The realization hit her like a wave, and for the first time in her life, she felt a sense of pride. She was no longer invisible. As Alexander's grip on her hand tightened slightly, a surge of energy coursed through her. She felt the connection between them deepen, the bond solidifying. The world around her seemed to fade, leaving only the two of them. It was as if time itself had stopped. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the mockery she had endured, not the isolation she had felt for years, but the promise that the Alpha King had made. He would protect her. He would stand by her. And she would stand by him. "We are bound," Alexander whispered, his voice low, but clear. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she looked up at him. His eyes softened, and for the first time, she saw a glimpse of something vulnerable behind the hard exterior. It was a look she had never expected to see from the mighty Alpha King. "You are my mate, Emma, and nothing will ever change that." The certainty in his voice left no room for doubt. Emma nodded slowly, her heart swelling with emotions she had never allowed herself to feel before. She wasn't just the weak Omega anymore. She was the Alpha King's mate, his Luna, his equal. The pack would no longer see her as insignificant. She would no longer hide in the shadows. As they walked away from the center of the ritual ground, side by side, Emma could feel the eyes of the pack upon her. But now, she no longer felt the sting of their judgment. She felt their respect. And that was enough. As Emma stood by Alexander's side, her heart still racing from the moment of his declaration, she couldn't help but feel a strange sense of disbelief. The ceremony had only just ended, but everything had changed. The pack, who had once looked down upon her, now regarded her with respect and even a hint of admiration. As they walked together through the temple grounds, Emma could feel the weight of Alexander's presence beside her, the air thick with his authority. He was the Alpha King, the ruler of the northern territories, and yet, in this moment, he was with her, not as a ruler and subject, but as mates. She had never imagined a life like this. She had never imagined herself by his side, walking beside him as his equal. But here she was, the once rejected Omega now at the side of the Alpha King. As they made their way to the royal chambers, Emma's thoughts raced. She had been through so much in her life: abandonment, ridicule, and rejection. She had grown used to being invisible, to being ignored, to being nothing more than a shadow in the pack. But now, everything had changed. She was no longer invisible. She was seen. She was valued. Alexander's steady presence beside her was both reassuring and overwhelming. He had claimed her, chosen her in front of the entire pack. She had never been wanted before, not by anyone. But now, the Alpha King had chosen her. Emma looked up at him, his profile illuminated by the soft glow of the torches lining the hallway. His silver-gray eyes were fixed straight ahead, his expression unreadable. He was a man of power, of strength, but there was something in his gaze that softened when he looked at her. It was a look of warmth, of understanding, and for the first time, Emma felt like she truly mattered. As they reached the royal chambers, Alexander turned to her, his hand gently resting on her shoulder. "You are safe now, Emma," he said, his voice low but firm. "No one will ever harm you again. I will protect you always." Emma's heart fluttered at his words. She had never had someone protect her before, never had someone fight for her. But now, she had Alexander, the Alpha King, the most powerful man in the land. And he was hers. She wasn't sure what to say, so she simply nodded, her voice caught in her throat. Alexander smiled, a soft, rare smile that made his features appear even more striking. You don't have to say anything, he said. I know you're overwhelmed. This is a lot to take in, but know this, you are my mate. And nothing will ever change that. Emma's heart swelled with emotions she couldn't name. She had never known love like this, never known someone who would stand by her, who would fight for her, who would claim her as their own. I will never leave you, Emma, Alexander continued, his gaze softening. You are mine, and I am yours. Together, we will face whatever comes our way. Emma finally found her voice, her words barely above a whisper. I never thought I'd find someone like you, she said, her eyes filled with unshed tears. I never thought I'd find someone who would see me, who would choose me. Alexander reached out, cupping her face gently in his hands. You are worthy of being chosen, Emma. Don't ever forget that. You are strong, kind, and capable. I chose you because you are everything I've been looking for. Emma's breath hitched in her throat. As she looked into his eyes, for the first time in her life, she felt truly seen, truly valued. She wasn't just an Omega anymore. She was Alexander's mate, and nothing would ever change that. As they stood together in the royal chambers, the weight of their bond settling between them, Emma knew that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't even begin to understand. But for the first time, she wasn't afraid. She was ready for whatever came next, as long as she had Alexander by her side. As Emma stood there, the soft glow of candlelight flickering in the royal chamber, the weight of the past few hours began to settle over her. She had never imagined her life would take such a turn. Just this morning, she had been the Omega everyone ignored, the one no Alpha would claim, and now, here she was, standing in the very chambers of the Alpha King. Alexander's words, his promise to protect her, still rang in her ears. The uncertainty that had plagued her for so long was finally starting to fade. She was not invisible anymore. She was his. She glanced over at Alexander, who was sitting across the room at a large, ornate desk, looking over various scrolls. His presence was undeniable, and Emma felt her heart flutter every time their eyes met. He was a king, a powerful leader who commanded respect, yet when he looked at her, it was as if she was the only person in the room. Emma felt a rush of emotions she wasn't entirely sure how to handle. She had never known love like this, gentle but firm, protective yet allowing her space. She had never known anyone who cared for her so fully, someone who would stand by her side no matter what. She stood still for a moment, letting the silence fill the room, before walking toward him slowly, her footsteps echoing softly on the stone floors. When she reached the desk, she hesitated for a brief second before sitting down across from him. Alexander looked up from the scrolls, his silver-gray eyes softening when he saw her. A smile tugged at the corners of his lips. Is everything all right, Emma? He asked, his voice rich with concern. Emma nodded, though she wasn't entirely sure what to say. She had so many questions, so many thoughts swirling in her mind, but for the first time in a long while, she was at a loss for words. I can't believe all of this, she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. It's like a dream, Alexander. I never thought this would happen to me. I never thought anyone would choose me. Alexander set down the scrolls and leaned forward slightly, his gaze never leaving hers. I chose you because you are exactly who you are, Emma. You don't have to be anyone else. You are strong, kind, and more than worthy of being loved. His words warmed her heart, and for the first time in her life, Emma felt like she truly belonged. She wasn't just someone to be tolerated or ignored. She was worthy of love, worthy of protection, and most importantly, worthy of being seen. I will always be here for you, Alexander continued, his voice steady and sure. We will face whatever comes our way, together. Emma smiled, a small but genuine smile, her heart full. Together, she repeated softly. There was a sense of peace in those words, a sense of security she had never felt before. In that moment, she realized just how much had changed. No longer would she have to hide in the shadows. No longer would she be the broken Omega who was overlooked by everyone. She was the Alpha King's mate, and nothing could take that away from her. The future, once uncertain and full of fear, now seemed bright. She wasn't alone anymore. She had Alexander, and together, they would navigate whatever came next. As the night wore on, Emma and Alexander sat in comfortable silence, the weight of the world outside the royal chambers not reaching them. In that moment, Emma knew that whatever challenges they would face them together. And that thought gave her a sense of hope she had never known before. The days that followed Emma's official claim as Alexander's mate felt like a whirlwind, each moment blending into the next as she adapted to her new life beside the Alpha King. The royal chambers, once foreign and intimidating, began to feel like home. The servants, though respectful, gave her space, as if they too recognized the new position she held in the pack. Alexander, ever attentive, guided her through each new experience with gentle patience, showing her the intricacies of life as his mate, the Luna of the pack. Though the initial shock had worn off, Emma found herself still in awe of the power and beauty surrounding her. The great halls of the castle, the quiet gardens where she and Alexander would often walk hand in hand, the sight of the pack members who now regarded her with newfound respect, it was all so surreal. She could hardly believe how much had changed in such a short time. It was one of those quiet mornings when everything seemed peaceful that Emma found herself sitting in the royal garden, the soft hum of nature around her, when Alexander approached. His presence was unmistakable, as always. She turned to find him standing at the entrance of the garden, his dark hair swept back, his silver-gray eyes watching her with a soft intensity that made her heart flutter. "Good morning, Emma," he greeted her, his voice warm and comforting. "Good morning," she replied, smiling up at him as he walked toward her. He sat down beside her, the gentle rustling of the leaves and the distant sound of birds chirping filling the space between them. "You seem deep in thought," Alexander observed, his gaze never leaving her face. Emma smiled softly, her eyes drifting to the flowers around her. I can't stop thinking about everything that's happened. How quickly things have changed. One moment I was the Omega no one wanted, and now," her voice trailed off as she looked at him, a mix of wonder and disbelief in her eyes. "Now you are mine," Alexander finished for her, his tone steady, yet filled with affection. "And you will always be." Emma's heart swelled at his words, the warmth of them spreading through her chest. She had never known such certainty, such security. It was overwhelming, but in the best way. "I still can't believe it," she whispered, almost to herself. "I never thought I'd be worthy of someone like you. Someone so powerful, so important." Alexander reached out, gently cupping her cheek in his hand. His touch was tender, reassuring. "You are worthy, Emma. More than you could ever know. I chose you because of who you are, because of your strength, your kindness, and your heart. You have everything I could ever want in a mate." Emma looked up at him, her eyes locking with his. There was no uncertainty in his gaze, no hint of doubt. He truly meant every word. "And I chose you because you are the one I have been waiting for," Alexander continued, his voice low but clear. "From the moment I laid eyes on you, I knew that you were the one I was meant to be with." Emma's breath caught in her throat. She had never heard anyone speak to her like this before, and the sincerity in his words took her by surprise. "You are everything I need," he added softly, leaning in slightly, his forehead resting against hers. Emma closed her eyes for a moment, taking in the closeness, the comfort of being with him. She had never felt so safe, so at peace. "I will always be by your side," Alexander promised, his voice filled with a quiet certainty. "No matter what comes, we will face it together." Emma opened her eyes to find him watching her, his expression unwavering. The weight of his words settled in her heart, filling her with a sense of security she had never known before. She smiled, her heart lighter than it had ever been. "Together," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "Always." As the sun rose higher in the sky, the two of them sat together in silence, the bond between them stronger than ever. Emma knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she and Alexander would face them side by side. And that was enough to give her the strength to face anything. She was no longer the Omega who had been ignored, discarded, and forgotten. She was Alexander's mate, his Luna, and nothing could change that. Days passed peacefully in the royal chambers as Emma settled into her new life beside Alexander. Each morning, she awoke to the sound of birds singing outside the castle, the sunlight filtering through the large windows, casting a warm glow across the room. It was a world so different from the one she had known, one that had been filled with doubt and fear. Now, it was filled with the quiet comfort of knowing she was loved, cherished, and protected. As the days went by, Emma began to find her place in this new world. Alexander, ever the patient teacher, showed her the responsibilities that came with being his mate. She learned the customs of the pack, the rituals that bound their lives together, and the delicate balance of power that existed in the kingdom. But through it all, Alexander was always by her side, guiding her, supporting her, and making sure she knew that she was never alone. One evening, as the sun began to set, casting a golden light across the castle grounds, Alexander took Emma for a walk through the gardens. The air was crisp, the scent of flowers and fresh earth filling the space around them. The silence between them was comfortable, each step they took echoing softly in the quiet evening. "You've adjusted so well, Emma," Alexander said, breaking the silence as they strolled down the garden path. His voice was filled with pride, and Emma felt a warmth spread through her at his words. "I never thought I would," she replied softly, glancing up at him. "I never thought I could belong anywhere. But with you, I feel like I've found my place." Alexander smiled down at her, his eyes softening. "You belong with me, Emma. You always have. And I will make sure you know that every day, in every way." Emma smiled, her heart swelling with affection for the man who had changed her life so completely. "I feel it," she whispered, her voice barely audible as they continued walking. "I feel like I'm truly seen for the first time." They stopped in the center of the garden, where a large stone fountain bubbled softly. The setting sun cast long shadows across the ground, and the golden light bathed them both in a peaceful glow. Alexander turned to face Emma, his expression serious, yet full of emotion. "You are seen, Emma," he said, his voice steady and strong. "You are more than worthy of being seen. You are my equal, my Luna, and I will never let you forget that." Emma felt a rush of warmth fill her chest, her eyes meeting his with a quiet intensity. She had never imagined she would be standing here, in the heart of the royal garden, with the Alpha King. But here she was, with him, and everything felt right. "I know," she said softly, her voice filled with gratitude. "And I will never forget, Alexander. You have shown me what true love is, and I will spend every day showing you how much you mean to me." He reached for her hand, his fingers gently brushing against hers. "You've already shown me, Emma," he said, his voice low and tender. "And I am grateful for you every day." The two stood there for a moment, the soft sounds of nature surrounding them. The bond between them, once a fragile thread, was now a strong, unbreakable connection, one that they both knew would withstand whatever challenges lay ahead. As the evening wore on, they continued their walk through the gardens, their hands intertwined, the peaceful silence between them speaking volumes. In that moment, Emma knew that she had found her place, her home, and her heart. And with Alexander by her side, she knew she would never have to face anything alone again. As the weeks passed, Emma began to find herself not only within the walls of the castle, but also within the vast world that Alexander had shown her. She was no longer the quiet, invisible Omega she had once been. She was the Luna, the Alpha King's mate, and she was growing into her new role. With each passing day, Alexander's unwavering support helped her feel more confident, more certain of her place in his life and the kingdom. Yet, despite the comfort she now felt, there were moments when Emma would look out over the royal gardens or stand in the grand halls of the castle, and she couldn't help but feel a bit of uncertainty. The responsibilities of being Luna weighed on her. She had never been prepared for the complexities of pack politics, the delicate balance of maintaining peace and unity among the different factions, and the expectations placed upon her as the Alpha King's mate. But Alexander was always there, his presence grounding her, his calm demeanor providing reassurance when doubt crept into her thoughts. One evening, as they sat together in the library, the scent of old books and polished wood filling the air, Emma glanced over at Alexander, who was deep in thought, his gaze focused on a map spread out before him. She admired how he carried the weight of his responsibilities with such grace, how he always seemed to know exactly what to do, even in the most difficult situations. "How do you do it?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with curiosity. Alexander looked up from the map, his silver-gray eyes locking with hers. "Do what?" he asked, a small smile, tugging at his lips. "How do you manage everything? The pack, the kingdom, it all seems so overwhelming sometimes." Emma's voice faltered slightly as she spoke, but she didn't look away. She was seeking an answer, not just from him, but from herself as well. Alexander's expression softened, and he leaned back in his chair, his posture relaxed. "I don't do it alone, Emma," he said, his voice low but steady. "I have the support of my pack, my allies, and most importantly, I have you." Emma felt her heart swell at his words, but she couldn't help but feel a twinge of doubt. "I want to be more than just your support," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want to help you, to make a real difference." Alexander stood and walked over to her, kneeling down beside her chair. He reached out and took her hands in his touch warm and reassuring. "You already are making a difference, Emma," he said softly. "Your presence, your strength, your kindness, it all matters more than you know. And together, we will face whatever challenges come our way. You're not just my support, you're my equal, my partner, and I trust you with everything." Emma's breath caught in her throat as she looked into his eyes. There was such sincerity in his words, such unwavering belief in her. It was as if, with those few words, he had lifted all the weight of her doubts, replacing them with a sense of clarity and purpose. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I'll never let you down." Alexander smiled, his eyes filled with pride and affection. "I know you won't." The moment hung between them, silent and filled with an unspoken understanding. As Emma sat there, holding Alexander's hands in hers, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. She no longer felt like the Omega who had no place in the world. She was Alexander's mate, and together they would face whatever came their way. The uncertainty she had once felt began to fade, replaced by a deep trust in the man beside her and in herself. Emma knew, with every fiber of her being, that she was where she was meant to be, and for the first time in her life, she felt truly home. The days seemed to slip by in a peaceful blur. As Emma settled deeper into her role as the Luna, Alexander's presence beside her was a constant source of comfort, and the weight of the responsibilities that had once felt so overwhelming now seemed more manageable. She was learning, slowly but surely, how to balance the intricacies of pack life, the duties of being Alexander's mate, and the care of the people who depended on them. Still, there were moments when doubt crept in. The stakes were high. The strength of the pack, the future of their people, rested on their shoulders. Emma would sometimes find herself standing in the royal gardens, staring out at the distant horizon, contemplating the vastness of it all. One afternoon, as the sun began to dip low in the sky, Alexander joined her in the gardens. The cool breeze rustled through the trees, the scent of blooming flowers hanging in the air. He had been busy with matters of the kingdom, as always, but he had found a moment to walk with her. "You seem lost in thought," Alexander said, his voice smooth as he stood beside her, his presence filling the space between them. Emma smiled softly, turning to face him. "I was just thinking about everything we've built, about the future. It's a lot to think about, and I'm not sure I'm ready for it all." Alexander's expression softened as he reached for her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. "You don't have to be ready, Emma," he said, his voice steady and comforting. "You're already doing more than enough. Together, we will face whatever comes our way. You're not alone in this." Emma looked into his eyes, the certainty in his gaze settling the last of her doubts. She had never truly been alone, not with him by her side. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what I would do without you." Alexander smiled, his thumb gently brushing the back of her hand. "You will never have to find out. I will always be here for you, Emma. I promise you that." As they stood there, hand in hand, Emma felt a sense of calm wash over her. The doubts that had once plagued her, the fear of failure, all seemed to fade in the light of Alexander's unwavering support. She had a place in this world, and that place was with him. Together they were a team. As the evening settled in, Alexander led Emma to a quiet corner of the garden, where a stone bench sat beneath the shade of a large tree. They sat together, the silence between them comfortable, the world around them peaceful. Emma leaned her head against Alexander's shoulder, closing her eyes and allowing herself to relax. "Do you ever wonder what it would have been like if things had turned out differently?" Emma asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. If you hadn't become the Alpha King, if I hadn't been chosen as your mate? Alexander turned to her, his expression thoughtful. I don't spend much time thinking about what could have been, he said slowly. What matters is what is. And what is, Emma, is that we are here, together, and that's enough for me. Emma smiled, feeling the truth of his words settle in her chest. The past was behind them, and the future, though uncertain, was theirs to shape. With Alexander by her side, she knew that they would face whatever came together. And that thought, more than anything, filled her with a sense of peace. As they sat together in the garden, the fading light of the day giving way to the evening stars, Emma knew that no matter what challenges the future held, she would always have a place at his side. And that was enough. The world around them might change, but the bond between them was unbreakable, and in that, Emma found everything she had ever needed. The next few weeks brought a new rhythm to Emma's life. With each passing day, she became more comfortable in her role as Luna, her confidence growing as she navigated the complex world of pack leadership. Alexander remained a constant source of support, his guidance invaluable as they worked together to strengthen their bond and lead their people. Yet, Emma could not shake the feeling that there was still more to learn, more to understand. Her role as Luna was not just about standing beside the Alpha King. It was about being the heart of the pack, the one who held them together, the one who led by example. One evening, as the stars began to twinkle in the dark sky, Emma sat alone in the garden, deep in thought. The cool night air carried the scent of pine and wildflowers, a reminder of the world beyond the castle walls. She gazed at the moon, the light casting a gentle glow over the grounds, and she thought of how far she had come since that fateful day when she had fallen at the mating rite. She had been nothing more than an invisible Omega, dismissed and ignored by those around her. But now, she stood as Luna, by the side of the most powerful Alpha in the land. The journey had been long and difficult, but she had found her place, and it was here, beside Alexander. Emma. Alexander's voice broke through her thoughts, soft and filled with concern. She turned to find him standing at the edge of the garden, his tall figure illuminated by the light of the moon. He had been watching her for some time, his gaze filled with quiet understanding. I didn't mean to worry you, she said with a small smile, standing to join him. I was just thinking. Alexander closed the distance between them, taking her hand in his. You've been working so hard lately, he said, his tone gentle but insistent. It's important to take a moment to breathe, to reflect. You don't have to carry everything on your own. Emma's heart warmed at his words. She had always carried the weight of her responsibilities, had always felt the need to prove herself. But with Alexander by her side, she realized she didn't have to do it alone. I'm still getting used to everything, she admitted, her voice soft. But I'm learning. I'm learning what it means to be with you, to lead with you, and to support our people. Alexander smiled, his silver-gray eyes locking with hers. And you're doing it beautifully, he said. You've already done more than I could have ever asked for. You bring light to this pack, Emma. You have a strength in you that no one else can match. Emma felt a surge of warmth in her chest at his words. She had never known someone to believe in her so completely, so unwaveringly. Alexander's belief in her gave her the strength to keep going, to push through her doubts and fears. Together, we'll make this pack stronger, Emma said, her voice filled with quiet determination. Alexander's gaze softened, his hand gently cupping her cheek. Together, he echoed. Always. As they stood there in the garden, the weight of the world around them seemed to fade away. In that moment, there was only the two of them, bound by love, trust, and a shared purpose. They had come so far, and they still had much to do, but Emma knew that with Alexander by her side, she could face anything. The future was uncertain, yes, but they would face it together, as equals, as partners, as mates. And that thought filled her with a peace she had never known before. The pack would be strong, and they would be stronger still, because they had each other. With Alexander by her side, Emma knew she was exactly where she was meant to be.